Hi, I'm Mike Cerrone with Mastermind Agent, and welcome to the Referral Mastermind Call. This is where we come together and we strategize, we brainstorm, we think about ways to get more repeat and referrals from our past clients and sphere of influence, our friends and family and acquaintances. If that's what you're here for, you're in the right place, and excited to get started here and get rolling. We're still bringing people in. But again, thank you for being here. Hey, Austin, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today at the Mastermind.
Yeah.
Did you have a, go ahead.
Kind of, I'm a newer agent, so I don't really have any referrals as far as, because I don't have any sales yet. As far as that side of things, but I have, a contractor that I work with to build my ADUs and just kind of, how do you feel, or like, what's the best way to approach, maybe contractors that are fixing up houses to be sold or those type of things as a referral?
Okay, cool. So thanks for opening up and bringing us a question. Let me step back and make sure I understand what you said. You said you're working with contractors to do did you say an ADU? What was the thing you used?
Yeah, we just built 2 ADUs on our property out in El Cajon.
What's an ADU?
Accessory Dwelling Unit.
Associated Dwelling Unit.
No,
okay.
Accessory Dwelling Unit.
Oh, accessory. So what does that mean? Is that like a house? Is it an attached home?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it could be either one. And a lot of times people who are looking at houses, especially for investments, they look to have a property that they can build an ADU on. So just out of curiosity, like, when I go to Lowe's or Home Depots, you can be in line with a bunch of contractors, and they're probably fixing up a house or something like that and trying to get them as referral people. This
is interesting. Okay, so I still want to go back to this ADU. I'm a very curious person. I hadn't heard the term before, but it may be local to your area. Does that mean that they have an HOA, a homeowners association? Did I get that part right?
No. An ADU is basically maybe a better term, or another term would be a granny flat or something that's built on a current property. But California law has stated, and it makes it much easier for people to get permitted and build accessory dwelling units on their properties.
Okay, so we're talking about, like, you have a house on your property, but you build a second structure, right, like a garage or something. But in this case, it's going to be a living unit.
Correct. Yes.
But you weren't zoned to be a duplex or to have multiple units initially. So this is some kind of exception.
Yeah. Well, no. So I had a duplex already that I built the 2 new ADUs on. So basically, you can get 2 units per unit. So I could have built 4, but I didn't have the space. So
interesting. So and now, can you rent those out?
Yeah. No, they're already rented out.
Have to be owner occupied to rent them out? Is that the catch?
No.
So an investor can, when they have a property would only have 2 units, now they can have 4?
Correct. Yeah. It's a much faster process, but I mean, I meet a lot of contractors, and I thought that would maybe be a good space to get referrals, because they're going in to maybe fix up a house before an owner sells it, or, something like that.
And they can create an income stream on the side of the property where there wasn't one before, or an unused garage in the back off an alley or something like that. Is that the idea?
Yeah. And you can do an attached ADU or detached ADU. Yeah.
Interesting. And so you are now, so thank you for the clarification. I was a little confused, but I got it now. And so now you're talking to contractors, you're bumping into people who are working on these units right, inside of a Home Depot or a place where they're getting construction material. And you're talking about talking to these people and finding out about opportunity to list these particular properties. Is
Right.
that correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Interesting little angle. And now you said you're a newer agent. So have you done this before, or anybody you know who's done it as far as making this a business model?
I mean, I've listened to certain people that talked about it, but I didn't really get clarification on what's the best approach to, go up to a contractor and I mean, besides like, hey, I'll cut you in, or or gift cards, or I don't know.
And what you're trying to do is get the contractor to refer you to the owner.
Yeah. Correct.
And get you a leg in with the owner or a step in with the owner. So let's ask this: what have you been doing? Have you been taking any action? And if so, what have you been saying, and how's that turned out?
So far, I've just been running open houses for other people and getting contacts that don't have agents. They just come by the house, getting their information.
You're doing traditional open houses. But let's go back, Austin. Let's go back to this ADU that you've been talking about. Let's drill into this. What have you been reaching out to any of these contractors? Have you, like, first of all, how'd you know they were there? Have you been talking to them? Have you made them any offers or any suggestions? What have you done so far? What kind of action or results have you received so far doing this?
Well, I mean, I've driven by places where I see, construction trucks out there, and I say, hey, listen, it's mostly guys that are fixing flippers. So it's a little bit tough because they already maybe have an agent. So I don't know really how to separate myself, except for, maybe giving them a bigger piece of the pie. I don't know.
Yeah, let me answer a couple things for you. So this is a good one. Thank you for bringing this up. This is kind of an interesting one. I love niches. Just talked about a really cool niche yesterday with somebody on delinquent property taxes. But this one's an interesting niche or an interesting concept. Let's play with it a little bit. You just brought up this question of how can I give an incentive to this flipper in this case, or the owner of this property, to use me instead of whoever they've historically been using. Let's talk about that idea in this area or any, and that's this: if you negotiate with people on price, if you're only negotiating on price, you're either always going to lose or you're always going to do it for almost no profit. You will wind your way down to no profit. If price is the only thing you're negotiating on, you're in trouble as a business model, whether that's a real estate agent, a mortgage broker, a home builder, somebody who sells widgets, anybody. If they negotiate on nothing but price, they're in big trouble. Their business model is going to go away quick. That's why discount brokers don't tend to make it in the long run. They might make it in the short run, but the long run is really hard on them because somebody can always come in and offer to do it for less, right? You could go pick up the business by offering them to do it for, I'm just going to make up numbers, 2%. And another guy comes in and says they'll do it for 1%. And then somebody will walk in and say, I'll do it for $500. And then somebody else comes in and says, I'll do it for $100. Somebody else walks in and says, I'll do it for $5. And before you know it, there's nothing there to work with. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I think kind of what I'm angling towards is working with investors and finding, because I work with ADU geeks and other and I work with different financial people. So I might go the route of working with investors and finding properties and being able to express to the property owner that, hey, we have investors that are interested in your property and they can buy much for more and quicker because they want to build an ADU on it, or they want to expand the property. So they'll tend to pay a bit more than what the standard comps are to purchase that property.
Yeah, now you're bringing up some more. Now you're bringing up a value proposition, right? And now you got a better approach. If you
Right.
can create value and then you can turn that into an offer with a call to action, your results are going to be much, much higher, no matter what business you're trying to attract. Um, and so in this particular case, you mentioned this idea of this fact this ADU is going to create additional value in the property because it creates an income stream, which is therefore through capitalization and cap rates, it's going to basically create a higher value to an investor on the property than what would have been there before. And this has been historically true throughout all the time of real estate is, the idea of the highest and best use. And one of those ideas is getting an income stream out of the property. How can you increase the income stream? If you could do that, you've increased the value of the property. And so that's the concept that you're coming at from just a regular seller with a property, and you have a pool of ADU flippers, investors, or people that want to come in and work in. Is that what I was hearing?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting value proposition. We have to switch things around, though, because your target now is regular traditional homeowners, and your offer is, I can get you more than the traditional real estate agent because I've got a pool of people who see a higher value to your property than would happen in a normal market sale. You're going to have to figure out how to do an elevator speech on that, which means getting the idea across in 10 seconds, 30 seconds max. So you're really going to have to work on your verbiage so you could explain it to I don't know about a 5-year-old, but maybe a 5th grader. They're
Absolutely.
pretty smart.
Sure.
If you can explain it, what you're doing, boom, boom, people get it, boom, boom, because it's kind of a new, unique topic. I've been doing this for 3 decades and I didn't know what an ADU is. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. I love to learn. My point is that the public's not going to know what it is, most likely. The people in your area aren't going to know. Most of the agents you talk to aren't going to know. You're going to have to be able to break it down into what it is, and most importantly, what the benefit is to somebody who's going to get involved with this type of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're going to want to look, it sounds to me like you want to figure out how to be a market maker. A market maker is the traditional broker, right? So you're bringing the buyer and seller together and you're kind of getting between them and you're matching them up, the market maker, and then you make a commission for doing that. We've expanded. In the old days, we all did that. And if you go to other countries like Australia and stuff, that's what they still do. All the brokers do it that way. They bring the buyer and the seller together. We've just found out a better way through co-oping to get a half of the deal and half of the deal. And then through technology and these connections, the MLS, and we connect together and we get a better price for everybody. But you are kind of trying to create a market. Let's do this. We've got some other people on the call. Let's see if they've got any interest in this or any ideas about how you might go about generating business in this niche, this ADU niche. If anybody listening has any ideas for Austin, again, this is a mastermind. So if you've got any ideas to share, please unmute yourself and tell us what you're thinking. All right. Well, Marie, you got an idea there, Marie? No? Oh, I hear you almost. I'm having a hard time hearing you, Marie, or whoever's talking. I think we got a bad connection.
Yeah, it's a real choppy and robotic. I can't hear.
Okay, so Austin couldn't hear either, Marie. Thank you, Marie, for trying to tune in, but something was going on with your connection. If you want to hang up and try to call back in, I'll try to make sure I let you in. Unfortunately, with Zoom now, I got to let everybody in, so I sometimes miss everybody. But I'll do my best to see you. Well, Austin, while we're waiting for Marie to try to cut back out and come back in, let's play a little bit more on this idea. The first idea was, you mentioned at the beginning, going and meeting people at the Home Depot to find out and locate where these things are already being constructed. So,
well, yeah, I mean that was one half of it, but the other half is searching MLS for properties that have, looking at square footage of the home versus a property. I can put a filter on and try and maybe do a marketing blast out to those people and say, hey, listen, if you're looking to sell your home, we can get you more value. We can get you a higher price than the standard people, because investors would like to come in and build on it, right?
Do you have a pool of investors created?
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Because I'm an investor myself, so I'm in Club 500. I'm in, a bunch of different investor groups.
Good. So that's there's two sides of the equation, right? You're trying to make sure you have together these people, these investors, these flippers, these could be long-term investors, people who want to do contractors, the people who are going to go in and do the work,
right,
and invest the money to turn this thing from a single unit to 2 units, or 2 units to 4, or whatever is going to happen there.
Right.
That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is the purchase. So with these investors that you've talked about, have you talked about representing them to go find them properties that meet the criteria that they need in order to execute on this ADU?
Yes, I have. I mean, I'll put together an NOI, cash on cash return. Those type
operating income,
like a portfolio for them.
Good. So you're running the cash flow numbers for them to show them, right, if they invest, what the estimated value of the property would be, and also the cash flows, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. And you've been doing that. How many have you done?
Well, so far 2. It's brand new. I've been doing it myself I've done hundreds, but that's just for my investments.
How new are you?
I've been doing it for a month and a half.
Yeah, you're pretty new, about 45 days.
Yeah.
Welcome to the brokerage side of the business.
Well, I'm not a broker. I'm just a realtor.
In my state, everybody's a broker, so that's what
okay.
Welcome to being an agent. Yeah. Every state's a little different in their laws, but welcome to the sales side of the business. How's that?
Yeah, you can't become a broker here in California until after 2 years.
Right. Gotcha. So let's talk about this pool of investors. You're going to make, what offer are you making to them? What are you telling them? You're telling them that I'll run analysis for you. Isn't that something they already know how to do? How's yours different than what they can already do?
Well, it saves them time. So I do it for them and make a good presentation. I mean, I go out and find the properties for them. Basically it's saving them time.
Are you more in the bird dog capacity where you're going out and finding them? Is that the role that you're offering?
Yeah. I mean, I drive around all the time. I go to, whenever I see a sign, I drive by the property, take a look at it and see what's possible.
And do you lock things up on an option and then sell the option to them? Or what's your service, or what's your master plan here?
Well, I guess I could try and wholesale it, but I haven't done that yet. I should probably get a little bit more in the weeds and wholesaling, but I haven't done it yet.
Just remember, if you do that type of thing and you start acting as a principal, you got to make massive disclosure to both parties, any party involved, any primary, so
right,
buyer, seller, especially anybody unlicensed. You have to make sure they know you're licensed. They have to make sure you know you're going to make a profit. You got to make it look and sound so ugly in your disclosure that no one will ever say that you took advantage of them. So in your disclosure, you've got to say, I'm going to win, you're going to lose. I'm super smart, you're super dumb. I have all this expertise, you have none. I am not kidding when I say this. You want to overdo it if you don't want to end up losing your license, getting fined, getting sued, or even maybe going to jail if they call it criminal. So I'm just telling you, you got to tiptoe into all this in that realm. I'm not saying you can't do the model. I'm just saying if you become a bird dogger or somebody who tries to wrap up a deal and hand it off, you said wholesaler.
I don't really want to do that
because you have a license. A lot of people that do this don't get a license because they don't want to have the liability issue of the fiduciary duty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think I would just represent the buyer. I mean, in that case.
And so when you do that, are you looking for, because you said MLS earlier, are you looking for properties in the MLS? You're looking for properties that are unlisted? What are you going to look at?
Well, unlisted is a little bit difficult because they don't necessarily pay a buyer agent. I mean, unless I come up with a different contract for the investor.
You can
separately,
negotiate
but then
that
you're kind of getting into the weeds again. Then
you can negotiate it like a FSBO deal.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, as a buyer's agent, you can go negotiate somebody to pay you as the buyer's agent, even though you don't represent them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Look back into your agreements on that for California. I'm here in Colorado, and that's the way we would go about it. Every state's a little different.
Yeah, California has a lot of.
I understand. Colorado's been the head of the nation on a lot of real estate law, at least early on. We messed around with dual agency and everything way back in the 90s. But everybody says that. We're all experimenting across the country. But I understand California has a lot of rules. We're all trying to protect everybody. It's all good. Remember, that's what I'm trying to say, is make sure that everybody is protected in these transactions and everybody will win.
Right.
And don't say anything that's not true. I'm just trying to give you a lot of warnings because I know you're excited, you're young, you're hopping into this thing. I assume you're young. You're young to the business. All right, let's open this up again. Anybody have any thoughts so far about what Austin and I have been talking about? Go ahead and unmute yourself and give us a shout.
Hey, Mike, how you doing today?
Hey, Laura, good to hear from you. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, well, matter of fact, I just closed up. Sorry, let me turn that off.
That's all right.
I just closed on one today that was actually a FSBO. Had the buyer, and I contacted them, and they paid me, But I've got another one going right now, and this is actually a short-term rental, and one of my buyers is an investor. Contacted that guy, and he's going to pay me as well. So I'm putting that together. But I do it as, like you said, where I'm in Tennessee. We do have a form for an unrepresented seller, and I put on there my percentage commission. But make sure you have that signed before you take your buyer there, because otherwise they'll cut you out. Matter of fact, I usually get that signed before I even tell my buyer about it, because they will cut you out and they'll find it. Yep. So, but other than that, it's doable. And he can also, which I just did this today, I just looked in my MLS for anyone that was out of state that owned multifamily properties and that owned it for the last 5 years, because at 5 years, you've got that diminishing rate of return. So if they purchased it 5 years ago, now they're losing some on their ROI. So they may want to rethink about selling it. So he may be able to put together some buyers and sellers.
Good point. Yeah, and they've had a lot of appreciation the last couple of years. That's a good one.
Exactly.
What do you think about that, Austin?
The depreciation? Yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
And Laura's
and they can actually take out depreciation further than or before 5 years, like they can set it up. So, I mean, if you're in a LP or an S corp, they might actually already have taken all their depreciation out of the property.
Well, maybe if they did some accelerated depreciation, some ARCs.
Yeah.
This is so what Laura was trying to get across there and did a really good job of was that you can absolutely go work with people who are not listed yet, and just make sure you're using full disclosure and to them, make sure that they sign off, that they realize they're not being represented, and who you represent, that you're representing the buyer in this case, and that you're going to get paid at the closing from the proceeds from the seller, right? I mean, that's basically what we do when the listing agent pays us, is when you look at the crazy law, or at least the concept on how to structure that, it's all coming from the seller anyway.
Right.
So you just got to go make sure you get an agreement with them. And Laura had a good point. Do that before you bring it over to your buyer.
Right.
And then you can make this model sing. You got to make sure you're going to get paid for your work.
And for sale by owners, I normally look on Zillow and like Craigslist. Does anybody have any other tool that they use for sale by owner because it's not on MLS?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Now on Zillow, you're looking under when you look at the top right where it says other, are you checking in there for your for sale by owners? Okay.
No, I can find for sale by owner on those two tools.
Okay.
I just was wondering if there was another tool that somebody has.
Yeah. Well, there's an app. Actually, you can do it on your computer called Bonanza.
Bonanza. Okay.
And it'll pull in from different sites. But I'll tell you, and the one I just closed on today, it was actually a buyer looking in a certain area, and I just called everyone in that area. Actually, this was for a lot. But I actually just looked up all the owners and just made a call to them. That's it. Made a call, left them messages, and believe it or not, 3 called me back. I got 2 listings coming up from it. So
Nice.
You never know. So, I mean, just hit them up.
Nice job, Laura. That's what I call winning. That's aggressive. That's awesome. Nice work. Austin, there you go. You got a couple new ideas as far as finding fit. And if anybody else have any ideas, please chime in for finding FSBOs. Some of the areas that, if you can find a place that nobody else is looking, you have a better chance of either listing it or putting something together, even in this situation. And in fact, you have a nice presentation to a for sale by owner, which is, you should talk to me because not only can I help you get this property sold, I can help you potentially, that might be a better word to start adding. I can help you potentially sell it for even more than fair market value by looking at a way to add value to this property.
Right.
That might be something to throw out to them to get the conversation started, be part of your marketing out to, or your offer out to these people. Laura was doing the offers by phone. For looking for FSBOs, driving around is always a good idea in areas that you're interested in. Looking for signs, because some people, that's the way they start. They just throw a sign in the yard, and then a week or 2 later, they think about listing it on a site or whatever. They may not be that savvy, and they're just kind of slowly working into it. Well, you may pick them up while they're just got the sign out there and nobody else even knows about it other than the neighbors. Another one to think about is for sale by owners is old fashioned. In the old days, 30 years ago, we all listed everything in the newspaper. There was no internet. And so a lot of people from that era, that's what they still think you need to do, is throw it in the newspaper. So you can look for newspaper listings, and the local metro papers are pretty expensive. So a lot of those folks, then they turn to their local newspaper. So if you have a little local newspaper in the area, go back and look in the classified section. And if you see homes for sale back there, you won't find many, but those are probably people who aren't getting the word out very well. And so now you've got a low competition opportunity.
Yeah. The other thing I look for is, like, if I'm driving around, I find a for rent sign for quite a long time. I I will look up the address and find the owner and, put a call in saying, hey, listen, I live right here, and they're out of state. So non-owner occupied, and try and get them to say, hey, listen, you got all these vacancies or this vacancies, and you see that the grass isn't cut, and try and pull them in to selling.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's always been a popular area of work. And depending on your market, that could be as much as 10% of the properties. When I was doing a lot of geographic farming, the area that I was working, about 10% of them were NOOs, and we would go after those with that approach. So that is certainly another area. Let me go back to one other thing that you mentioned in your plan, and that is qualifying the properties to see if they will be able to do your ADU. Right? I think you said you were looking for square footage of the property and the lot and other issues, since some of them won't qualify, I assume, because of the size of the structure or the lot or something. Is that an issue?
It really has to do, I mean, the main thing, because they only have like 5-foot setbacks for ADUs. So it really has to do with connected sewer and electrical and gas. So the company ADU Geeks, they'll take a look at it for you and let you know right away if that's possible.
Great. Well, I think you've got an interesting plan. You got to figure out how to put all the pieces together, but we've kind of gone through a couple of the different aspects of it. Do you have any questions that you would like to put forward to the group?
Well, I guess I just, when I come across these flippers and they're, with their trucks, and I get out of my car and I go and talk to them. What could be, my differentiator? Like, because most of them already work with a real estate agent.
How old are you?
Me, I'm 40.
Okay. The reason I asked that was, if you were real young, like a kid, like you were 20 years old, you have an approach you could take there. And I was going to recommend that. It's still an approach that could work, but it works really well when you're really young. And you just said you were new to the business, so I was curious. The approach you can take is the approach that you would take with any type of new business, and that is you show a lot of interest or curiosity in what they're doing. So you just walk up and say, hey, I'm a local real estate agent. I see you're doing some construction here. What are you doing? What are you trying to achieve? And that's the other thing, going way back to the Home Depot, is you're kind of getting a lead to that person. So in the Home Depot, you could just walk up to them and say, hey, I see you're working on a project. What are you working on?
Right. Okay.
Some of them will talk to you, some of them won't. Remember, it's prospecting, it's a numbers game, and you just start talking with people. Let me go back all the way to, I'm trying to remember his name. I'm a face person, so I remember everybody's face but not their name, and that's why I try to do these calls, but then nobody shows me their face, so it's kind of hard. But anyway, Casey Margano, he does high-end luxury homes. I can't remember, somewhere back east, Philadelphia, New York. I'm trying to remember where. But he does these $1 million plus properties, and a lot of it is new construction. Okay. And he talked about breaking into that area to represent new home builders. And what his recommendation was to go to the site where they were doing, thank you, Laura, go to the site where they were doing the construction and just walk up and start chatting with them. And say, hey, I'm curious what you're doing. And I'm a local agent. I just want to know what you're doing. I'm trying to wonder if I have a buyer for you. Could you tell me what you're doing here? And then you go back the next day. And especially if you show a lot of curiosity, or why are you putting the beam that way? Or why did you rip the wall out that way? Or what kind of concrete is that? Even if you know the answer, you do something my father used to say, which is you play dumb and you ask a lot of dumb questions, because it allows the other person to open up and share, and communicate and get a dialogue going. And you actually may learn something like, I didn't know what an ADU is. I didn't just pretend like I knew what an ADU is. I said, what the hell is an ADU? Teach me, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And because remember what you're trying to do. You're trying to create a relationship. If you create a relationship with someone, it's not transactional. It's not just that one thing. And people will work with you no matter what the rate is. As long as it's within reason, they're going to work with you and not go to someone else just because it's a half a point better, whatever. They know that they've got this long-term trust in your operation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so you build that trust by meeting them and getting to know them. And it's not going to be a wham bam thing. It's going to be a meet them once and then go back and meet them a second time and go back and meet them a third time and go back. Because remember, they're not going to be doing just this one property. They're going to be doing, I don't know, 3 properties a year, 5 properties a year, whatever they do. And it's going to be all throughout the future. Yeah.
Right.
So build the relationships with the community. The best way to do it is to pop out on the lot and start asking questions, tell them what you're doing. Say, hey, maybe I'm just wondering if I have a buyer for this. I saw what you were doing and I'm just curious. And I work with some investors. Remember, one other idea there is if you want to control a conversation, number one, if you want to make someone feel really good, number two, just ask a question and then use your mouth and your ears in proportion. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Okay, so you say one thing and you listen twice. Listen twice as much.
Right.
That builds relationship. People love to talk about themselves.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, Austin, I hope that helps. It's an interesting project. I hope you'll tell us how it develops. Been kind of fun to talk about.